Now that you've got everything configured for pick and place, we can actually run the pick and place process. The Run PNP button will take you to where you can control the actual process. Here what we see is the center of the display and a preview of your board. Everything that's in light gray indicates a component that hasn't been placed. The darker gray section shows you the actual pads that compose that footprint. Additionally, there's a button here called Table View. When you click that, it'll give you the option to sort components by batch or by status. Batch sorting says here's batch 1 and all of your components in batch 1. And then here's batch 2 and all of the components in batch 2. You can have as many batches as necessary and they'll be listed in alphabetical order. In this case, sorting by status doesn't do anything. Going back to the board view, we can see a preview of the board. When you're placing things, you'll have an active batch which will be displayed next to the batch name. This area on the right here shows your list of batches. By clicking on a batch name, you can show or hide that batch. If we want to place a different batch, we just click the Activate button underneath the batch. I think it makes sense to start with batch 1, but you can start with batch 2 or whatever you need. An additional way to select a batch is by going to this active selection area where you can select the needed batch. It will also show you the number of parts in the batch so you can see how many still need to be placed if you're rerunning it. Here there's an option that enables and disables optical correction. To have things go a little bit faster, you can disable optical correction and it won't use the camera for any feedback at all. If you enable optical correction, the pick and place system will check to make sure that it's holding a part and that the part is oriented correctly according to the rotation needed before placing it. You can enable it to have those additional checks run, or you can disable it if you want things to be placed without any additional error checking. When you have your active batch selected, you can click the Place Batch button and it'll ask you if you want to run it automatically or manually. Before that, the first thing that you need to do is set up the batch in the printer, meaning you need to place your parts in the component trays. This table here will break everything down by location. So in this batch I have 2 diodes in tape 1 and 2 diodes in tape 2. So I need to put the appropriate tape with the diodes in tape slot 1. And then I mark this checkbox here to make notes on the interface that say, okay, I've placed that there. I then place another appropriate tape in slot 2 physically and mark the interface to say I've done it. Now I know that my components are ready to go. After that, I click Run Automatic Placement. The printer will handle all of the placements according to the information in your pick and place file and the configuration you already did on your printer, and it will place everything automatically within a minute or 2. You can also manually place them, but we'll get into that in another video. Here you'll see a live status of the different parts and whether or not they've been placed. You can see in the right column that we've already placed D1, D2, D3, and D4 because of this circle checkbox. You can also see that they've been placed by looking at the green color on the display here. If we go back to table view, we can see that these components are all placed and their status. Now that everything is placed, we can see the printer is not letting us place batch 1 again because everything has been placed already. If for some reason we want to remove a part and place it again, this Retry Placement button next to each part can be clicked and that will mark the part as not placed. Then you can rerun the placement for everything that is not placed within a batch. If you click Place Batch 1, it'll only place D1. It won't try to do D2, D3, or D4 because they've already been placed and are marked as placed. If we want to redo D1 and D2, we can click Retry Placement on both of them and the machine will replace both of them. Running pick and place with optical correction will help you catch some errors that you might see. This checkbox enables or disables optical correction. Now we've got it enabled, and in this state, it's disabled. I want to show you what happens when it's enabled and we run into some issues. There's 2 parts in this batch that we haven't placed yet, so I will work on them and run automatic placement. For this example, I've set things up on the printer so I don't actually have any parts that it will be able to place to make sure that there will be an error while it's running. Here's an error on D2 because the printer is reporting that it was unable to place that part. Optical correction will help catch errors where the printer failed to pick up the part or if the part just wasn't placed correctly. You can see there's a little hint here that explains which parts will or won't be placed. If they're marked as placed or error when you run a batch, they won't be placed again. So you need to manually click the Retry Placement button and then the part will be available for placement. Here you can see that we can run placement again to fix the part that didn't work out during the last placement. After inspecting, if you want to place anything again, you need to click the Retry Placement button. You'll also see on the display here what current part it's working on. So as it's placing D1, D2, or D3, it'll list that part in this location. And now we've placed D2 correctly this time. Previously I've been showing automatic placement, so now I'm going to show you how to do manual placement. Manual placement is useful if you're running into issues with the automatic placement features. Right now we've got a bunch of parts that aren't placed in this batch. I click Place Batch, and I need to put all of the parts in the correct storage locations on the printer's component trays as overviewed in a previous video. In this case, I need to put 2 tapes in place. Once I do that, instead of clicking Run Automatic Placement, I can click Run Manual Placement. And what manual placement does is tell the printer to pick up the part and go to the location that you specified for the part in your pick and place file. Right now my printer is picking up D1 from the tape and holding it just above where it should be placed on the board. It doesn't place the part, instead it hovers to let you manually tweak the positioning that you want. If the part needs to move further towards the back of the machine, you can press W. If it needs to move further to the front, you can press F. You can press A or D to move it left or right. You can press R or F to move the head up or down, which can be helpful when you need more visibility. And if you need to rotate the part, J will spin the part clockwise and K will spin the part counterclockwise. Once you're happy with how the part will be placed, click Place Component, and it will put that part down before picking up the next, allowing you to repeat the process until you are done.